Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending today's session. Just a couple of reminders before we get started. Please keep your microphones and your cameras off during today's presentation. Also, if you need a certificate of completion, please email Marilyn after today's session, and she will get that out to you. And lastly, please take a couple minutes at the end of the session to fill out the survey. We really appreciate any and all feedback, comments, possible topics for the future. As we are winding down this set of trainings, we will be looking at starting to schedule sessions for the spring, probably starting in April again. So if you think of anything, please note that on the survey and we'll get that on our list. So with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer Henderson as she is presenting today on the North Dakota Statewide Housing Needs Assessment.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. As Kylie said, my name is Jennifer Henderson, and I'm the Planning and Housing Development Director for North Dakota Housing Finance Agency, and I was asked today to present on our updated 2022 Statewide Housing Needs Assessment, which was recently completed by NDSU Center for Social Research. And we had a lot of partners participate in this project for us, including Department of Commerce, the Health and Human Services, USDA, and the Department of Corrections, just to name a few. I do want to mention that the full housing needs assessment is on our website, as well as a really nice condensed version of the study. And I will pop a link to those in our chat after I finish today. Please feel free to use the chat to ask any questions. Kylie was going to help facilitate any questions that come through as we are going through the presentation. So with that, I do want to mention one of the things that came out of this 2022 large statewide housing needs assessment, which was an update to the 2016 assessment, is that number one, majority of this information is related to current population trends only. It doesn't necessarily take into account any changes that we might have related to economic growth and workforce recruitment successes. Also, as part of this study, we intend to identify key housing indicators to complete updates to this 2022 assessment on an annual basis so that we can continue to have our numbers be a little bit more current and following the trending. So the first thing that we want to talk about today is related to population projections. And as you can see from this slide, majority of our population is going to remain about the same. And most of these trends are consistent throughout the state. We will have population increases, though, significantly in our 65 and older cohort, as well as a decline in the 45 to 64, which is mainly just a shifting from that 64 range to the 65 and older. The rest of the populations, we are really seeing that they will maintain pretty much the same levels. So total population growth is really only anticipated to increase in 2025 by 1.3% or 10,000 people. On this slide here, this is the projections or the household changes in income from 2010 to 2020. As we can see in this, there has been a rise in income, but really a little overall change in the number of moderate income households, but we are starting to see, excuse me, a decline in the number of households earning less than 50,000. So the trend is consistent with national trends. But now for projections. On the projections that were discovered in the housing needs assessment is that incomes of the higher income households are just really expected to hold steady as far as increases. And we are expected to see the largest growth in household income levels in the extremely low to very low income households. And with that, the extremely low income households, which are earning less than $26,000 annually, are those that are in danger of experiencing homelessness. The North Dakota COC data indicated that over 5,000 households experienced homelessness each year from 2019 to 2021. So our greatest projected growth is in those lower income categories. There's two models that the center used for basing its projections, and they really indicated that model 2 is probably the most conservative and the one that they're leaning towards as being the most realistic. The model 1 was really based on building trends, where the housing projections using model 2 were based on population projections. So they have indicated that that's probably where we need to look as far as trending and needs for housing. Some key takeaways from the housing projections for the assessment was really that the aging baby boomers will really drive our housing needs, and that lower income households are expected to where we're going to see the biggest growth. Also, that we need to really look at the fact that our current inventory and future needs, we need to make sure everything is aligned so that we are taking into consideration the needs of our, I'm sorry, folks, that we are taking into consideration the needs of households going forward. So population trends, we're seeing increases in low-income households. And what does that mean for housing affordability and trends of homeownership rates and rental trends, as well as income restriction categories and affordability? So homeownership, we'll start with that. And I'm going to very briefly touch on homeownership because I do know that a majority of our participants are in the rental housing projections. Can I get my So homeownership. Homeownership rate has dropped from 67% in 2010 to 62% in 2020. So we're seeing that decline in homeownership, and it's really across all income categories, with the greatest drop obviously in the lower income households, those earning $74,000 or less. And that is really due to affordability and the impact of higher interest rates on lower income households, as well as the availability of housing options that are affordable for those households. And the interest rate really does have a significant impact on homeownership. So we're really projecting that homeownership rates are going to continue to drop as long as our environment for interest rates continues to be what it is today. So as you can see on this slide, this is really talking about the buying power of households earning less than $52,000 and the impact that the interest rate has on that household. So at a 6% interest rate, given some general projections of what affordability is, you can clearly see that today at 6% interest rates, their buying power is $117,611. There's not a lot of housing options in that price range available. In fact, there was only 3,100 total homes in the state of North Dakota that met affordability in this time period. So again, as I mentioned, the household tenure is changing in North Dakota. In 2010, 67% of households owned property, and it's declining to 62% as of 2020. And we will continue to see that. And obviously, as homeownership decreases, the renter occupied households increase. And so we're going to continue to see that, that change in housing tenure. And with that, that's also going to have some adjustments on our ability for our lower income households or households in general to rent. So since 2010, the rents have increased nearly 50% in North Dakota. And the number of units that are available at these lower levels has declined as well. On this slide here, it talks about rental affordability by household and really focusing in on the lower, the bottom line on this slide is households earning less than $52,000. Their total affordability is $1,300 a month. And affordability is meaning that nobody pays more than 30% of their income towards rent. So as rents have increased and household incomes have declined or will continue to decline, housing cost burden in households in North Dakota is definitely changing significantly. The younger renters, ages 15 to 24, 49% of those renters are cost burdened. And very similarly, the 65 and older households, 55% are cost burden renters. And we are likely going to see that to continue, considering that renter households are increasing. Our household population trending is for 65 and older. And so as the 65 and older continues to move into rental opportunities that they may need to move from their current living situation, we are anticipating more households to be cost burdened. So really some takeaways of housing affordability is that we have a decreasing tenure of owner occupied housing and an increase in rental. And those home ownership rates are continuing to decline because of lack of availability and lower buying power for lower income households to move into home ownership. And there is something that I do want to mention, and it's on this slide, that a majority of North Dakotans can afford housing, but the lower income households are cost constrained. And with that, any increases in lower income level households is going to increase those number of households that are cost burdened in our state. So some key takeaways to the housing needs assessment that I just want to point out is that, again, our aging baby boomers are going to be a significant driver of housing needs. Lower income households are where our projections are looking to increase. And again, these projections are based on our current trends and have nothing to do with any workforce recruitment or economic changes that North Dakota may face in the next 3 years. And again, also our aging housing stock, we need to make sure that we are rehabbing existing housing to keep it available for low income households, and that we are creating housing opportunities in places where people are wanting to go. And we need to make sure that that stock is affordable and accessible to lower income households and our baby boomers. So with that, I thought maybe I could show you some opportunities to access more information on our website. And Kylie, I can't see the chat. Is there any questions that have come up? I knew this was going to be a shorter session.
No questions as of right now.
Okay. So this is our website, ndhfa.org. And if you click on our publications, if it wants to move here, we have our housing needs assessment, and there is a lot of information here related to housing needs assessment, including the population forecasts and detailed tables that were produced by this center. Nancy Hoder's full presentation is also available on this website, and then a very lovely condensed version, which I think is probably the best resource for those who want to really look at the housing needs assessment and all of the information that was identified within that housing needs assessment. Why is the housing and needs assessment important to North Dakota? I think what's really important is to continue to prioritize what housing is being developed in North Dakota, where is it being located, and what affordability levels are being provided. So North Dakota is using the Housing Incentive Fund, which is legislatively appropriated each biennium for the production of affordable housing, including workforce housing. It was really started in the energy impacted counties, those that were being faced with challenges of supporting workforce such as teachers and police and other essential service workers. And over time, as those counties have really been able to kind of stabilize their housing needs, the Housing Incentive Fund was expanded to really focus statewide. It continues to support workforce housing and senior housing, 65 and older, 55 and older, actually. 65 and older is really where HUD's definition of senior, but we've expanded it to being 55 and older so that we can have a larger group of population that can go into that type of housing. But that said, its continued support is obviously readily apparent in the information that the housing needs assessment provided, in that we have to continue to produce additional housing that is affordable to very low and low income households, and include our 65 and older group, which is where we're seeing the increases. The population projections also anticipate that the main population growth is going to be in regions 7 and the Fargo area. So the Bismarck, Mandan areas and the Fargo areas is where some of the largest growth of population are going to be. And that makes sense in that there is some that are moving closer to medical. And so we need to make sure that where we're putting some of those units is appropriate. But we also need to make sure that throughout North Dakota, there is the existence of affordable housing statewide, including our rural communities. And that has been a huge priority looking forward to the Housing Incentive Fund, including rehabilitation of existing housing. USDA Rural Development Portfolio has aged significantly. It has rental assistance tied to it, and we want to make sure that we are preserving that needed housing in our rural communities. And so continued support to the Housing Incentive Fund is very important for that work to continue, as our federal resources are limited and highly competitive. And so it makes it difficult to use in our more rural communities. With that, I do want to also point out that our website does include other information related to housing facts and ways that you can communicate with your legislators to discuss the need for Housing Incentive Fund, to maybe think about the housing needs in your community or specifically properties that you own. We do have programs available that will help finance the rehab for those units to preserve the affordability. So definitely reach out to myself, our executive director, Dave Floor, to have those conversations about any needs that you might have for your properties. So with that, I am going to see if there's any other questions that we might have.
There is one. Do the funding rounds go based off of this?
Do the funding rounds go based off of this? Could you clarify that question just a little bit more?
Yeah,
Whoever asked it.
I'm wondering if, like, your housing tax credits and the gift fund, do you take that into consideration when you're financing projects?
Obviously, housing need is most definitely considered when we are reviewing applications for any of our programs. Every applicant must supply some information related to the current market of the community in which they want to be in, as well as it could possibly the current vacancy rate of that particular project itself. And if it's having some vacancy problems, is it related to rehab needs or accessibility needs? And is that where we need to focus our funding? The Housing Incentive Fund has priority points in the allocation plan today to prioritize rural projects. So if there is a feasible and well put together rural application, it will score quite well in our competitive application round. Right now, Housing Incentive Fund is currently totally expended. We don't have any funding, and so we will need to make sure that there is some consideration to fund the program in this next session. Did I answer that question?
Can you talk about your different funding sources?
Sure. We provide both federal and state funding sources for financing multifamily affordable housing projects, including the low-income housing tax credit program, the home program, the housing trust fund program, which are all three federal programs. And our federal programs can really be quite complex and sometimes more burdensome than some of our rural projects are able to handle based on the availability of property management and the ability to do all of the paperwork that's necessary for the program, which is why Housing Incentive Fund is so important. But with those programs combined, today we can help finance about 250 units or so annually, and that's rehab or new construction. So on one of the slides, I indicated that there is a potential need for an additional 9,000 units, and that's both rental and home ownership. But you can kind of see that that need won't be able to be satisfied by our current resources. So it's really important to prioritize feasible projects. And so we look at that when we are awarding those applications. Other programs that we do have available are much simpler programs, including our rehab accessibility program, which can provide grant dollars to upgrade accessibility features in a home or a rental unit, and that rental unit specifically for somebody who has accessibility needs. So if there is a tenant who is a long-term tenant residing in an apartment and needs to have a tub changed to a walk-in shower, that is something that we can help support through the rehab accessibility program.
Are there any other questions for Jennifer?
Jennifer, will you talk about the opening door program also for landlords who'd be interested?
Sure, I can. I do see a question that's coming out here that just asked about information for the rehab accessibility program. So if you don't mind, I'll pause to that question first. And I'll share my screen here related to our website. If I can get my under project financing. We have all of our programs related to financing a project, and that includes our home program, our housing trust fund, our housing incentive fund, and low-income housing tax credit program. But we also have our rehab accessibility program, which then all of the details related to how to apply for that program. Now, if this is a rental situation and it's for somebody's specific unit, we will ask, it does require a match of up to 25% of the total project. The grant program can only cover up to a total maximum of $5,000. So if the project is larger than that dollar amount, we would ask if there is any opportunity for the property owner to put in any features or funding to help with that upgrade. Also part of the program, when it does go into a rental unit, we require that the tenant be allowed to keep that modification even if they move out. So if we're replacing a tub with a walk-in shower, we do require the landlord to give permission to not require that tub to be put back in at when the tenant vacates. So it is a permanent modification that we are making.
There was a, how can I get an application to apply for that program, as I have a few consumers who need a walk-in shower? What are the guidelines to qualify?
Yes, so the rehab accessibility application is right on our website underneath that program. And all of the information related to how they qualify, and it's a very simple application. What we require is that the application be completed, some income qualifying documents are provided, as well as an estimate for the project. The income limitations for the program is not to exceed 80% of area median income, which is a higher income level. And you can actually find those income limits on the Rehab Accessibility Programs site. And it's right on the second bullet is the income limits for each county based on household size. Applications are simply submitted to our agency and the program administrator, and her name is Shanna. She will review the application and determine if there's any missing documentation. And then as a committee, we determine whether or not it's a fundable project. We are limited in the amount of funds that we receive each year because we utilize our agency capital to fund this grant program. So it is limited, but today we have funding available.
How many estimates are required?
Just one. And as I mentioned, bathroom accessibility is one of the main uses of the program. We've also installed wheelchair ramps for apartments, but that can be a little bit of a trickier situation. If a project has a, let's say like a joint entrance and only one client tenant in the unit needs wheelchair accessibility, we would prorate that that cost. But let's say you have several elderly tenants and the stairs are being difficult to navigate, we could probably look at qualifying all of them, making sure that they're income qualified, and then we could provide a larger proration for that. So that can be really kind of a strange project, but we have done it before, that multiple clients or tenants can benefit from an accessibility upgrade in an apartment complex. But mainly what we've been doing is single unit upgrades. And Cheryl, what was, opening doors?
Yeah, opening doors.
Yeah. For those of you who haven't heard myself or Shanna talk about Opening Doors Landlord Risk Mitigation Program, that is an opportunity for you as a property owner and manager to maybe protect yourself for taking a risk on somebody that you otherwise would have denied for housing. So clients that are working with a participating care coordination agency, and money involves the person, and their group is part of that program, can refer clients into the Opening Doors program. These clients that are referred are oftentimes having housing barriers that include criminal conviction or past evictions or past damages that would cause them to be denied for an application for housing. And this program will cover up to $2,000 of lost revenue or excessive damages that exceed the security deposit if a tenant doesn't vacates not in good standing. And so as part of the program, the participating care coordination agency provides monthly check-ins with that tenant to ensure that things are going well and that they are following the rules of their tenancy, and making sure that they're communicating with you as the housing provider to ensure that we are maintaining that client's housing stability, and hoping that they are successful in this new lease agreement that they've been given a chance on. So it's definitely a program that is to a benefit of a housing provider. And really in the last, since 2019, we've supported, I believe, a total of 30 households. We've only had 10 claims for reimbursement of that $2,000, and the average claim has been $1,500. So I would say successfully, we've helped to support a number of people who have needed that second chance, and we've also been able to support 10 housing providers who ended up with some claims, but we were able to help them with the full dollar amount that they needed. Any questions on Opening Doors can be directed to our agency at hfainfo.org or .gov. I'll get that in the chat. HFA info. There. And again, our website is ndhfa.org. So rental programs is where you'll find information about Opening Doors. Project financing is where you'll find information about Housing Incentive Fund and the Rehab Accessibility Program. Any other questions?
Let's see here. Does not appear to be. So with that, we will end today early. So thank you all for attending today's session. Again, please take a few minutes to fill out the survey that will be coming later today, as well as attending our next week's session. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Our last session of this series is Compassion Fatigue, and that is being presented by Heidi Nieuwsma from University of Mary. So I hope you are all able to attend next week's session. And again, please take a few minutes to fill out that survey, and any topics that come to mind that we can possibly have for our next round of series, which will start in April. Thank you again for attending, and hope you have a great day.